All right, welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us today for our informational webinar about the Master of Climate Change program in the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo. My name is Christina Pope. I'm the Graduate Studies Marketing and Recruitment Specialist in the Faculty of Environment, and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm joined today by faculty, staff, and alumni who will share their knowledge and experience about the Master of Climate Change, which we refer to as the MCC. There will be information on the program structure, alumni outcomes, student experience, and admissions requirements. We'll end the webinar with a Q&A session with questions from you, our audience. A couple of important housekeeping items before we proceed. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be distributed by email to all registrants about 24 hours after the webinar concludes. This email will also include any important links that we talk about during the webinar today. For the Q&A segment, as an attendee of this webinar, you can't unmute your mic or share your screen, but we encourage you to ask questions by using the Q&A box on your screen. You can also upvote other people's questions that you would like answered. In the Q&A period, we'll be answering questions that are being sent to us live, as well as a selection of pre-submitted questions. We may not get to every question depending on our timing, and we will be prioritizing questions we feel benefit the broadest audience. If your question is not answered during the webinar, rest assured we have your email address and all the Q&A history, and we'll follow up with you individually for anyone that we missed. Our first presenter today will be Dr. Wesley Van Wychen, who is the director of the MCC program and whose research focuses on remote sensing of the cryosphere and oceans, geospatial data management, and historical climate data rescue. We're also joined today by Teresa Wilson, the MCC program administrator, who will be helping out during the Q&A section should we need her to provide her expertise and insight. And we're also joined today by Rebecca Coe, a recent MCC alum who will tell us a bit about her experience in the program and what she's up to now. But first, the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. And the University of Waterloo was the first university in Canada to offer Indigenous application fee and tuition waivers, which are available to incoming and current students who are members of the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation or Six Nations of the Grand River. And before we get started to talk about the Master of Climate Change, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the Faculty of Environment. So the Master of Climate Change program is within our Department of Geography and Environmental Management in the Faculty of Environment. And our vision is to be at the forefront of environmental research, education, and innovation. Where working with the world for the world drives transformative change for people and the planet. And our picture on the right here is Environment 3, one of the buildings in the Faculty of Environment and our LEED Platinum certified building. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Wesley now. Take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. It really is a pleasure to have the chance to introduce the Masters of Climate Change program to you, kind of let you know what it's about from an academic point of view. And really just leading from Christina's previous slide, you are embedded within the Faculty of Environment, which I think is a really special place to be, where our entire focus within the faculty across all the departments and programs that we run is to really emphasize and address the most challenging problems and come up with solutions for these problems that our planet faces. And that really is part of the reason why the Masters of Climate Change program was created in the first place, was to train our next generation of students to address climate change, one of our most pressing issues. And so we now have about a 10-year, 12-year legacy of Canada's first and longest running master's program focused specifically on climate change. And related to that, we have over 270 alumni In a few slides later on, you'll see where our alumni have landed in terms of their work experiences, but it covers a very broad range of different types of work experiences. And so, as I mentioned, the whole point of the Masters of Climate Change is to train people with a specialized education in climate change. Okay. And what you're going to be working on is developing an understanding and a full knowledge of all aspects of climate change. So that includes both climate science, getting a background in the fundamental physics and understanding of climate change. It includes how do we adapt to climate change? How do we mitigate climate change? How do we transition to this low carbon future and build a resilient climate resilient society? Okay. And we are meant to help prepare our graduates for a diverse set of careers. You'll see an example in a few slides, but it really, we have alumni that have gone on to careers that span all sectors, whether that's government, NGOs, in business, furthering their academic careers. You really can go into a lot of different spaces with the Masters of Climate Change. And one of the things that I'll also mention here is, the Masters of Climate Change is a pretty specific program. So if you are really interested in addressing the Masters of Climate Change problem, or the climate change problem, the Masters of Climate Change is going to give you that specific training, perhaps more than another more generic course-based program might do. So Christina, if you don't mind switching to the next slide. So the Masters of Climate Change program itself is really developed around the framework of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And to do that, we have core courses, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a few slides. But there's three major pillars of the IPCC. One is understanding the physical science of climate change. The second pillar is understanding how are we going to adapt to climate change and build climate resilient future. And the third is how do we mitigate climate change. And so within our program, you're going to get training in those core areas. And then you're going to be able to choose some specific elective coursework based on your own specific interests as well. So there's flexibility here. Everyone gets the same kind of fundamental grounding of understanding in climate change, but then there's the freedom after that in your electives to start tailoring it to your specific career goals and your own interests, which I think is a really interesting and effective way of doing it so that each participant and graduate of our MCC program gets the chance to tailor it to what they want to do. Likewise, our faculty that teach in the program also have a diverse set of skills and backgrounds related to climate change. Myself, I consider myself a physical scientist, and a lot of my research focuses on climate data management, historical data collection and rescue, and understanding Arctic climate change. I have colleagues teaching the program who work more in governments and mitigation and adaptation. We have people working in planning. We have people more business focused. We have people from industry who are actually working on environmental impact assessments, those types of professional experiences as well. So there's a very broad group of researchers here that contribute to our climate change programming, again, addressing all aspects of climate change. The next slide, Christina. Okay, so just a quick point about the Masters of Climate Change program. It is a course-based program. So that means it's non-thesis. So you're not doing a traditional master's thesis that you would be for perhaps a 2-year thesis-based program at another institution. Instead, what you're doing is you're taking our coursework in a professional setting, culminating in the climate change focused project or an internship. So instead of a thesis, what students either do is are going to be completing a capstone project that encapsulates the Masters of Climate Change knowledge that you attain through the coursework, and then apply that to give you practical skills in addressing some aspect of a related project. Or you have the choice to also partake in an internship if you go out and find one that would give you that professional and practical experience in climate change as well. At the end of the day, our graduates get a Master's of Climate Change degree. So it states that right on the degree, it is a Master's of Climate Change. And the entire program is designed to be completed in about 12 months of full-time in-person studies, meaning that if you're looking at other master's programs or a thesis-based program, which is typically 2 years, this is a 12-month program instead. Next slide. Okay, some people within the program. So there's myself. My role is to oversee all of the academic side of the Masters of Climate Change program, and my role is the program director. It sits within the Geography and Environmental Management department here at the University of Waterloo. So that is headed by Dr. Christopher Fletcher. And then Teresa Wilson, who's on the call as well, is our program coordinator and advisor, who can give the more technical program related questions in terms of administration. Next slide. We also have core faculty that teach in the program, and it's Dr. Rich Petrone, Dr. Johanna Wandel, and Dr. Seth Wines. So these are our instructors that teach our core courses within the program. Each is an expert in their related field, whether it be the physical science basis of climate change, addressing things like adaptation and vulnerability, which is Johanna's areas of interest, and then mitigation, which is the area that Seth works in. So again, you are being taught by people who are directly working in the field within the core courses. So in terms of program structure, the way it works is typically in the fall term, you're going to take your 3 core courses, what we call GEM-CC 601, 602, and 603. Then throughout the remainder of your time with us, you're going to pick 2 more climate change designated electives, and you'll see a list of those in a minute. And then you also have 2 open electives that you can use to select courses that might be of interest to you, but they're slightly outside of the climate change field. They don't have to be. You're also able to take extra climate change electives for your program as well. But there is some flexibility for you to build a program structure that suits you. And it all culminates at the end as either taking a climate change projects course to give you practical experience that then you can use to develop skills to make yourself marketable for the workforce. Or if you go out and find an internship that is sufficiently climate change focused, you can use that as your practical experience to meet that portion of our degree requirements. So just to give you a little bit of background about the core courses. So in GEM-CC 601, you're going to be developing your understanding of the physical basis of climate change. So that means an introduction to the climate system, things like understanding atmospheric circulation, the impacts of the ocean. You'll get an introduction to what climate models are, how do they work, and as well as a history of kind of natural climate change and the distinction between natural variations in climate and anthropogenic climate change. This course is meant to be inclusive. So if you look at this and you say, oh, maybe my background's not in physical science, that's okay. It's meant to be inclusive and bring people up to speed on the background that you would need. So don't be worried or dissuaded if you don't have necessarily a background in physics or climate science. That's okay. It's meant to bring you up and give you the knowledge that you do need. In 602, you're going to be looking at kind of the range of expected outcomes that we expect in a warming climate environment. delve into the options that exist for adapting to climate change and thinking about questions about who's vulnerable to climate change, how do we address it, how does vulnerability differ across, different economic situations, between different geography situations, between different social and political geographies. It's meant to give an understanding of how do we adapt and how does vulnerability change depending on the specific circumstances that we are in. And the last core course is GEM-CC 603, mitigation. This is a really fun course as well, where you're going to start to learn about things like how do we actually mitigate climate change? What are geoengineering options to draw down carbon, perhaps? What are the trade-offs? What are the ethical implications of doing something like that? Evaluating the effectiveness of different mitigation policies, which have worked well, which haven't worked well, and how does the public perceive different policy options as a way to mitigate climate change. So very important questions that we need to think about and grapple with as we adapt and move forward into the future. So I won't go into quite as much detail for the kind of designated electives, but you can give a quick scan here. What the electives are meant to do is provide a broad breadth of different options. So if you are more interested in climate prediction and modeling, for example, there is a course that focuses on that. If you are interested in something like doing climate analytics and more data analysis, I traditionally teach a course in that called Climate Data and Analytics, which is an online offering. And you'll see anything here marked with an asterisk is an online, is usually an online only offering. So you have that flexibility in some cases as well. But again, you'll see the wide variety: health systems, land use, governance, carbon accounting and management. I will highlight that course as one that is taught by practitioners in the space who are doing carbon accounting all the time for their regular day jobs. They know the policies. If you're looking for like tangible skills in the workforce, they teach exactly what is being done in the field. So again, I hope you see something here that kind of piques your interest and you can see the wide variety of options available to you for you to tailor something to your specific interests. So as I mentioned, you have some required electives that are specifically climate change focused. There is also options to take electives as part of your open electives that are different from those that are listed there. You're also free to take those as your open electives as well. But maybe there is a course in sustainability, for example, at the graduate level offered in the Faculty of Environment that piques your interest. That could be something that would fall within an open elective. So the only thing to do here is look out for other courses that you think might be interesting, and then consult with the graduate schedule of classes to see what's available. And then if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to myself or Teresa and provide guidance in situations like that. Next slide, please. Okay, and really within this 1-year course-based program and the Masters of Climate Change program kind of writ large, we do have a real emphasis on experiential learning. So getting a chance to take what you've learned both in the core courses, in your electives, and then apply that knowledge in kind of a real world situation. And that's achieved either through our capstone course with a climate change focused project. So within that course, you would be developing kind of a potential proposal, be working on a specific project where you are taking something from start to finish. And that can be done in a variety of different ways. Sometimes it's done with external partners who have projects that they want done, like at a municipal level. But really, it's meant to give you that chance to work on something where you're applying your knowledge. The other way that this can be achieved, as I mentioned, is through our internship that you would opt into. So you get the chance to go out. If you find a job that has a sufficient climate change focus, that's a 4-month term, you can apply to that and say, send it to us, we'll evaluate it, and then you could use that as your experiential learning. Again, it's your chance to really get tangible skills, make yourself marketable in the workforce. Next slide, please. So maybe I'll turn it back over to you, Christina, to talk about where our alumni have gone.
Yes. I had the opportunity recently to look through LinkedIn to find out where our Master of Climate Change graduates from the last 5 years have ended up. So this is data from 75% of the Master of Climate Change graduates that we could find, and this is what I've learned. The largest sector of employment for the class is public administration, and that in the largest proportion included federal government positions. So this includes Environment and Climate Change Canada, Natural Resources Canada, and others like Transport Canada, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. And some common job titles that I was able to find include policy scientist, policy analyst, senior policy analyst, and physical scientist. So a range of roles within public administration. And we also have graduates working at the provincial and local levels as well. The second largest sector of employment is the professional, scientific, and technical services. And these include businesses that provide specialized expertise, so environmental engineering, research, and consulting services. So these firms primarily offer knowledge-based services, and they rely on heavily skilled professionals like those that graduate from the Masters of Climate Change programs. So some of these employers include WSP, Deloitte, and PwC. And then, of course, there were MCC alum that ended up in different sectors. This could include like utilities, educational services, and social and civil advocacy organizations. So some examples I found include places like Earth Credit Canada, Libro Credit Union, the Resilience Institute, and Cordy. So we do have a large majority of our students ending up in public administration and professional, scientific, and technical services, but there is really a wide range. And one thing that I was really impressed with when I was looking through the analysis for our graduates is that a lot of the graduates have either climate scientist or like climate sustainability or consultant within their job titles. So going into the MCC program, a lot of our graduates are working in or are taking on responsibilities that are directly applicable to the stuff that they were learning in the program, which was really amazing to see. And speaking about us, our amazing alumni, we have one joining us today. So Rebecca Coe recently graduated from the Master of Climate Change program, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience in the program. So take it away, Rebecca.
Thanks, Christina, and everyone on the MCC team for inviting me to speak today. And yeah, I'm really happy to talk about this program and my experience. Like I didn't really come in from an undergrad, straight from undergrad to the Masters of Climate Change. I kind of took a detour. So prior to joining the MCC program, I did my undergrad in biology and then went on to complete a Masters of Science program, which was a research master's in environmental microbiology. And then I worked a few years at a startup company doing project management and then stayed there for a few years. And it wasn't until the pandemic, which I had more time to reflect on like what my role was in the world. And also at this time, climate change and kind of right now is taking a backseat in terms of all of the geopolitical issues and economic issues in the world. So I wanted to learn more about what I can do to support like climate action in addition to what I was already doing as an individual. Like I didn't know what I know now, like policies and the national global effort, we can be doing or contributing. So I wanted to know more about that. So I decided to go back to school and I chose this MCC program at the University of Waterloo because It was a 1 year, it's a 1 year professional degree with various courses built in and packed in. So I really like that compact aspect of learning various courses from like fundamentals of climate change, mitigation and adaptation, as well as other electives that you saw supporting my learning. And also there's the research slash internship component. I understand that I don't think that's being offered next year, the research component, but what I had to write a research paper, and it was taking what I've learned and also from the courses and really articulating it in a way that was, I think, really gratifying. Seeing what I've learned in the past 8 months and then writing it all down in kind of like a thesis, even though it's not a thesis, it's like a little research paper. So I was really chuffed, actually, learn some new skills while doing the research paper too. So yeah. So overall, I had a really positive experience as a student in the core courses and in the electives. I found the professors were really enthusiastic, knowledgeable, and really wanted to see you succeed. And I really appreciated that they've updated the course each year to reflect what's going on in the world. And I feel like sometimes undergrad courses don't really have that aspect to them. So I really appreciate the professors who did that. And these profs, as Dr. Van Weichen had said, that these are their specialties. So it's very interesting to hear their perspectives and their enthusiasm and the passion they bring to class. And sometimes it could be very devastating because, climate change is not a happy subject matter, but it's also very fun and encouraging to hear solutions that are out there and what cities are doing and what communities are doing. Yeah, and I guess in terms of my cohort, it was a very, very diverse group of people. My classmates like came from like biology, philosophy, architecture, accounting, finance. So all these different people in this room like made for very interesting discussion and perspectives that added to the learning. Yeah. And I guess now what I'm doing is I'm a project coordinator at the Waterloo Climate Institute here at the University of Waterloo. I'm working on a project where we're developing online courses for municipal employees, and these courses are mainly developed by the professors here at the university, and we're supporting the development of the courses. And I felt the MCC program really helped me develop that really solid foundation of climate change mitigation and adaptation. And it allowed me to, when I'm reviewing these courses that the professors have written, like understand what they're writing, first of all, and also what gaps are in these courses. I guess I kind of also bring, like, everyone would bring a different lens to what they're learning. And so I'm like, okay, maybe we can add some case studies here, some examples from these cities that are doing like building solar panels or nature-based solutions that's helping to manage stormwater or something like that. So yeah, I think it helped supported my knowledge and critical thinking skills, which I've always been developing since undergrad and my first master's. Yeah, and yeah, so overall, I think I had a great experience in the course, and it wasn't always like, easy. I don't think any master's or post-secondary education is easy. I think it comes from being an active participant in my own learning and discussing with peers and people in my program. And it's always great to have those connections because it's very likely that you'll be crossing paths in the future or working with them. Yeah, so I think that's all, Christine, I have.
That's perfect, Rebecca. Thank you very much. And we're very lucky to have you working with us at the University of Waterloo. So thank you for lending your personal experience about the program for us today. All right. So now that you've learned about the program, a little bit about our alumni outcomes, you now are going to learn a little bit about how to get admitted to the MCC program. So the Master of Climate Change accepts students from a variety of backgrounds. That includes the humanities, social science, health, engineering, business, and others. And you're required to have an honors bachelor's degree or equivalent with a 75% admissions average or higher. If you're applying to the MCC program with transcripts from Canadian institutions, this average is calculated from your last 2 years of full-time study. And if you're applying with transcripts from outside of Canada, this average is calculated from your overall average. I should note that the list of backgrounds that I have on this slide is not exhaustive. The Masters of Climate Change accepts students from a variety of different backgrounds. And if you have any questions about your specific educational background, then definitely get in contact with us. You are required to submit 3 letters of reference who can speak to your experience and qualifications for our program. And normally these are from academic sources. A note that your referees should be using their professional or institutional email addresses when completing their references, which allow us to verify their identity. You'll also have to submit a CV or a resume, and you will also upload a statement of interest where you'll explain more about who you are and why you belong in the Masters of Climate Change program. Lastly, all graduate students at the University of Waterloo must meet minimum admission standards as well as proof of English language proficiency, or ELP. And if you're an international student, you may need to submit proof of English language proficiency, which I'll talk about in 2 slides. Applying to the University of Waterloo is a completely online process. So you set up your online account with a username and password, and then you can start your application. You'd select the Master of Climate Change as your program, input your personal information, and enter the required application information. So this will include your academic background and the information for your referees. At this point, you will need to pay a non-refundable application fee of $150 Canadian per program. So if you decide to apply to multiple programs at the University of Waterloo, please note that the application fee is $150 per program. Your referee will receive an email from Waterloo with a link to the secure and confidential online reference form as soon as you send the request. And they'll also receive 2 email reminders, which will be sent automatically prior to the application deadline. You may also send reminders to your referees from your application portal. If you're applying to multiple programs and you're using the same referee, they must complete separate reference forms for each application, just so you know. And the references are confidential and not shared between programs, so that's why they would have to complete it several times. Once you've submitted the fee, you can then begin to upload your application documents and track the status of your application through our application portal. There's a checklist on the portal where you can see what materials you still need to upload. And once you've uploaded your required documents and your referees have completed their reference forms, then your application is complete. And that is when we begin assessing your application. And just an important note that for the Master of Climate Change, the application deadline is February 1st. For our international applicants, if you're wondering how the academic requirements translate into your country's grading system, we do have a list of international admissions equivalencies on our website. This is one of the links that I will be sharing in the email that I send out at the end of this webinar when I send out the recording. And this site is a helpful guideline. It doesn't guarantee admission, but it gives you an indication of whether or not you are academically admissible. For the English language proficiency, we have several accepted ELP tests, and that includes the TOEFL and the IELTS and the university's own EFAS program. Just to remember that the scores are only valid for 2 years from the test date, and we recommend you complete your test at least 2 months before the application deadline in order for the scores to reach us in time. And there are exemptions to the submitting proof of English language proficiency. So 2 examples are if you've completed 3 or more years of post-secondary education at a Canadian institution or university, or if you've completed a graduate degree at a Canadian university. And there are other exceptions as well, and those will be found on our website. And again, it will be included in the email that I send out later. As of January 2025, the Government of Canada made changes to international student permits that affect graduate programs. The University of Waterloo, along with every other designated learning institution in Canada, will receive a quota of study permits with a specific allocation for graduate students. So graduate students will require a provincial attestation letter, which is sometimes referred to as a PAL, to apply for a study permit. When you're given an offer of admission to the Master of Climate Change program, you would then come onto our website and submit a form, send in a non-refundable $1,000 deposit, and then we would send you your PAL, which you could then use to complete your study permit. Tuition for the Master of Climate Change program is charged on an attendance basis. And this slide shows the tuition cost, which is the first value in the equation, and the incidental fees, which is the second value, and the total costs. And these values are rounded in Canadian dollars. Every grad student is assessed incidental fees. And this covers things like health and dental, student services fees, and for full-time students, you're also charged for a transit pass that gives you unlimited access to Grand River Transit services. When you apply, you'll be automatically considered for a number of entrance scholarships that we have for MCC students if you're applying full-time. And these admissions averages are calculated, like I said, if you have Canadian transcripts from your last 2 years of study, if you have international transcripts from your overall average, and in order to be eligible for these entrance awards, you must have a completed application by February 1st. And we have some tips and tricks on applying, courtesy of Teresa. So just a reminder that we look at your application as a whole. And that also means that we don't start looking at your application until it's complete. So we'll be looking at your grades, but also what your references have to say about you and also what your statement of interest says. So make sure that, again, that you complete the entire application in order for us to get an idea of who you are. And it's important that you select your referees that can speak to your abilities and who can provide you with a strong reference. It's also very important that you communicate with your referee ahead of time, let them know the timeline that you need to have the reference completed by, and they understand what's required of them in order to complete it. Like we've mentioned, the Masters of Climate Change is a course-based program, so a supervisor is not required. And your statement of interest is an opportunity for you to highlight your achievements and your abilities and explain why you would be a good fit and a great candidate for the Master of Climate Change program. So make sure that you give that component of the application some time and effort to think about. And it's recommended that you apply at least 2 to 4 weeks ahead of the application deadline, which I've mentioned is February 1st. And this just gives you a lot of time to upload your documents, troubleshoot any issues, gives your referees a little bit of breathing room in order to complete things within the deadline, in order for you to balance the requirements of completing your application and, of course, other life responsibilities. And last and very important is that we're always available to answer your questions. Teresa can be reached in the email on the slide, and I'll also include her contact information in the email that I send out with the webinar recording. So we are just one slide away from the Q&A section, but I also wanted to mention another opportunity to study climate change that may be of interest to some of our viewers today. So the Faculty of Environment also offers a graduate diploma in climate risk management, where you gain the skills needed to build climate resiliency in any industry. And it is completely online. It's a part-time program that is 4 terms in length, and so 1 course per term, and no study permit is required if you are an international student. If you're interested, we are going to have a webinar very similar to this at the end of November, and a link to register for that webinar will be included in the email that I send. All right, so that concludes the presentation portion of today. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about the program, alumni outcomes, and it's now time for us to answer questions from you, our audience. So feel free to use the Q&A box in order to ask a question. The webinar function doesn't allow me to unmute your mic. So if you raise your hand, I can't unmute your mic. So the Q&A box is the best way in order to get in touch with us. And we will get started with the content that we have in the Q&A box already. So first off, nice, easy question. What about urban planning? Yes, we do accept students to the MCC program with an urban planning background. All right, so we have someone who's living in Ottawa and is a mature student. And does the university provide any family housing or dormitories for students with children? If not, is there any support or guidance available to find suitable rental housing? I'll tackle that question first. So the first question is, yes, the University of Waterloo does have family housing for graduate students. However, there is a very long waiting list for it. So it is not likely that you would be able to find family housing um, with us on campus. It is a possibility, but you'd also have to be prepared for other scenarios. And in terms of guidance, I think that housing does have like a list of recommended housing, like listing sites for students that don't find housing with them. And another thing that could be helpful is if you're looking for housing, we can always connect you with some current graduate students that find out how they found housing and maybe they could put together some recommendations. So there are ways for us to connect you with some resources that could assist you with finding the housing that you would need. And then your second question was, are there scholarships or financial support programs available for graduate students other than USAP? There are private banking lenders that you can use, but those are the interest rates for those are typically higher, and the requirements for those are up to the bank's discretion. So those would be ones that would be like through a private lender. We do have one private lender listed on the GSPA site, which I can actually include in the email. And it's one that the University of Waterloo has worked with in the past when it's for graduate students. So the next question is, how many students are admitted into the program? Teresa, did you want to answer that or?
Generally, we have about the admission, the number of students who actually come into the program. We admit a number of students, but for various reasons, they may not actually become an incoming student. We've had as many as 40 students come in as incoming students. Generally, it's around 20, a cohort of 20 that you would be with.
Yeah, and that kind of oscillates per per year, obviously, but yeah, it's typically about that amount of students. So it's a good group, and um, some of your courses other graduate students can take, right? So you'll sometimes
Mhm.
find yourself in a larger class, and
Correct.
yeah, and then you'll sometimes find yourself in a class with just your cohort, which is a nice mix. All right, one question. You spoke primarily about the full-time options for study. Can you provide more information on the hours of study required? If I needed to continue working, is part-time study an option, and how long would this take to complete the degree? Anyone have any insights? Teresa, Wes?
Basically, there's 3 core courses that are on campus only. So you would need to be in the Waterloo region in order to do it part-time. The courses are 3 hours per week. And then above and beyond that, there's going to be the time that you spend on working on assignments and projects. The course-based only program without the internship, it would have a projects course, which again would be a commitment of 3 hours per week on campus. We have a number of online electives, so you actually wouldn't have to be on campus if you chose your elective options from those online electives. Now, that might limit some of what you can study, but we do have quite a number of, probably half the electives are on campus and half are online. And your slide did sort of show which ones with the asterisk were online. So that'll kind of give you a sense of whether or not it covers the topics that you are interested in. Oh, and as far as how long will it take? Um, Generally, I find if someone's working full time and going to school part time, they're taking 1 course per term. And so some students actually, if summer is busy for whatever reason, whether work or personal, they may go inactive in the summer term. So it may be that they're only actually taking 2 courses each year, but we're open to that sort of completion cycle if that's what's working best for our part-time students.
Great. We have a question where it says, I have some experience, some working experience in the climate change field. Is there any scope to provide a reference of my supervisor who's now in an academic field? So this reference would be speaking on behalf of their experience working with the applicant as opposed to from an academic background.
Yeah, they could just use the current information. So where the person is now and their current email address, professional, they academic, then I would just ask that within the reference, their referee just sort of explains a little bit of the situation that, because we've often had references from previous employers, from retired supervisors, but yes, just have the referee provide a little bit of context.
Awesome. The next question, do you have anything within the Master of Climate Change that tackles climate finance? Wes, I remember you mentioning that there was one course specific to carbon accounting. I don't know if you wanted to provide some additional insight.
So in the nomenclature for carbon accounting and management, that's actually like accounting for how many greenhouse gases are emitted in the kind of accounting. I think climate finance, Teresa, maybe you can let me know from there. Do you have a more intimate knowledge of our electives if there's anything climate finance specifically in the titles? I think in some of our courses it's certainly touched upon. But Teresa, maybe you can describe.
There is a sustainability finance course,
Right.
and it actually is quite popular as an open elective option with the Master of Climate Change students who are interested in finance.
Amazing. And I'm assuming that's not within the MCC program, but it's the advantage of having us embedded within the Faculty of Environment where there's
Exactly.
other departments.
And
Yeah,
having that flexibility to, okay, there is this course that I'm interested in, and I can take it as an elective.
perfect. We have someone who's taken the GDIP for climate change at Waterloo. What can I expect for the master's program? Are any of my previous courses eligible for the master's?
So I
You
guess I can start by tackling that from a program point of view, and then Teresa kind of, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'll put it over to you. So in terms of like, what can you expect in terms of a difference? I mean, the Masters of Climate Change, you would be kind of, I would say, enriching and deepening your knowledge of climate change issues. Of course, you're required to take more courses as part of the MCC as compared to the GDIP. So I would say it would build upon what you've done previously, but also work to enhance it. But Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong here.
okay.
You can't double dip in
No.
terms of the courses. So if you've taken a course for one degree already, that can't count for another degree.
But just to maybe clarify for a viewer, if they started the diploma and didn't complete it, could they then apply to the Master of Climate Change after taking like one or two courses as a GDIP student? Would that be possible?
Yes,
Yeah.
we could look at transfer credits, and we have also had students who have transferred in while they're in the GDIP and so before they completed the GDIP, they transferred into the MCC.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. One question is, do you grant an application fee waiver? We do not grant application fee waivers. The $150 Canadian is what we use to support the systems and people that it takes to assess your application. And we do put a lot of time and effort into assessing each application individually. So the tuition, the application fee cost helps us make sure that we get the right people into the program. So a couple other questions about like scholarships for international students and like funding for international students. Because this is a coursework program, it's important to know that funding opportunities are limited. We do have the entrance scholarships that students are automatically considered for. We do also have a database of awards and scholarships available through the Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs website that you can look through to see whether or not you're eligible for any of the awards. But just as a general guideline, coursework master's programs do have limited funding options. And it might be advantageous for you to see whether or not there are any scholarship opportunities within your current country or potentially within like previous employers or like previous community organizations. That might be an opportunity for you to receive funding from your own country. So one question is, someone's been out of school for a few years, and would it be appropriate to use professional references instead of academic ones?
Professional references are acceptable. If you've only been out of school for a year or so, Wes, I'm thinking possibly you want at least one academic reference. But if you've been out for
Yeah, like if it's 1 or 2 years and it's possible to find an academic reference, that's great. Different situations are it's kind of malleable, I guess I would say, depending on the specific circumstances that you have. So it's hard to come up with a blanket statement, but in situations where you might have a challenge finding an academic reference, we certainly consider professional references as well.
And to provide some context from this specific person, they've been out of school for 3 years.
I think, professional references, it's someone who, what I'm looking for generally is someone who can speak to your abilities and your motivation for doing the program. And that's what we're looking for in the reference letters.
All right, we have a question. What kinds of climate change mitigation solutions would be covered in this program?
So again, it's going to change kind of as Rebecca kind of alluded to, depending on what the course instructor chooses to showcase in a particular year. So it's going to evolve a little bit. Specifically to GEMCC 603, the mitigation course, I can say, like, in terms of concepts, there's things about like multilateral agreements, international agreements, national policies, provincial and regional policies, even household policies about how to mitigate climate change. There's assessments of how effective they are. There's things like climate change visualizations of greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, it's going to depend a little bit year to year, but it's taught by experts in the field. So the best thing to do is kind of look up the specific courses that you might be interested in, specifically for GEMCC 603, which is the mitigation course, and you can kind of explore yourself. Feel free to reach out.
We have someone who has a background in fine art and an HND in procurement and supply chain management. I would say to check the link that I send in the email to make sure that you have the academic equivalent to a Canadian Honors Bachelor's degree. I think that would be the most important thing. And then making sure that you would include in your statement of interest why you would be interested in climate change. Yep, okay, Teresa's nodding, so I think I did a good job there. And then another question, if the marks are a little lower than the requirement, but there is a relevant full-time work experience in sustainability and climate change, as well as a master's degree in environmental science, would there be like leeway or consideration for admissions in that front?
And that's why we say we look at the application package as a whole, because there are, if you don't fit and tick all the boxes for a standard admission, there is an opportunity for non-standard based on your entire package and looking at that.
Yep, exactly.
And I would say in these cases, what's really important as you build your application package is really think about, how do you craft your statement of interest to really express like your situation and why your work experience is relevant, and then think about how your references and referees can also like build that case for you.
Yep. Awesome. I think that answers a couple of questions that we have here about special admissions consideration. And we have someone who wants to visit the University of Waterloo in December. Yes, just reply to the email that I send out. We can work out a visit. Just do note that campus is closed near the end of December and early January, but we do have prospective students visit campus all the time. We can show you around and show you some of the spaces that you would be using as a student. Would a bachelor's degree with the completion of an independent research project be considered equivalent to a bachelor's degree with honors? So I would say it depends on your system of study. So for us in Canada, an honors bachelor's degree is 4 years in length. I know that some bachelor's degrees are 3 years in length. So you would have to look at the admissions equivalent page to determine what the equivalency would be from your country. And the second question you have is, what is the admission rate to the MCC program? And I will take a first crack at this, and Teresa can tell me if there's anything I'm missing. But I would say that students who are academically eligible and who complete their application and who are able to properly articulate why they have an interest in climate change have a very strong chance of getting an offer. And typically, the way that it works is that we end up with a cohort of about 20, 30 to 30 students that meet those kind of requirements. I don't know, Teresa, if you wanted to say anything else.
No, actually, that does sum it up. That because you don't need to find a supervisor. It doesn't limit, like, who's taking on additional students and who can supervise. So definitely, if what you said is correct.
Perfect. Will there be any assistance for looking for an internship, or will we have to find one on our own? How well in advance should we look for the internship?
I can address that. So the onus is on the student to secure the internship. That being said, we do provide like some guidance in that. We do have previous employers that sometimes will send us job postings that are applicable for the MCC program, and we will distribute those to students to have them kind of follow up on their behalf. There are also like services on campus that are available to the wider graduate and undergraduate community for career services like resume critiques, interview skills, things like that you can make use of. The onus again is on the student to find the internship, but we do as much as we can to try to guide people, and when we are made aware of jobs that are relevant, distribute them to students.
Perfect. We have a couple of questions left and a couple of minutes left, so this is perfect. Does the diploma program start before September 2026? And the answer is yes, because the graduate diploma admits every term. So if you are really interested in climate risk management, you could technically enroll in, I guess the next admission cycle would be May 2026, as opposed to September 2026. Is that correct, Teresa?
I believe that is closed and now it's going to be fall.
Okay.
But you can connect with me, and if we can get everything together quickly enough, we might be able to change the admit term.
Yep. All right. And then just one last question about funding, and I think we've already answered that one. So I'll ask you to review the recording that I send out. And of course, if you have any specific questions, you can always reply to the email that I send out. But we're just about at 1 p.m. here in Ontario, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you all for spending an hour with us and learning about the Masters of Climate Change program. I'll be in contact with all of you shortly with the recording and all the appropriate links that we talked about today. And I just wanted to just say a quick thank you to Wesley, Teresa, and Rebecca for lending their knowledge and insight and expertise on the program. And we hope to see you all in fall 2026.